All right, this video turned into 22 minutes of me talking about what I like and don't like about tactical shooters, where I think 99% of them miss the mark, and why I hope WARDOGS breaks that mold. I'm sorry, I wanted this to be a 10-minute video. Enjoy. So for years, I've been watching the same kind of content be made about the tactical shooter genre. Slow walking, military bro, dust in the air, operator checks his mag, someone whispers on the mic,
split and provide cover on this door.
Door breach, cut to logo. And the comments are always full of dudes going, finally, this might be the one. And yes, I know, I've made videos just like this. Videos where I'm being excited that this new game might be the one that actually gets it right. And then 3 months later, the Steam charts look like a flat line. Now we've got WARDOGS, the all-out warfare tactical FPS from Bulkhead. It's big scale, it's big ambition, it's that serious tone, transparent discussions online from the developers, the whole 9 yards. It has it all. And I'm watching this thinking, man, I really hope we aren't about to run the same play yet again, because we need to be honest about the tactical FPS space and where it's at right now, because there's a pattern nobody wants to talk about. The tactical FPS audience is loud. We're passionate, we're hyper opinionated. We'll write you a 3,000-word essay about the angle of a foregrip and why you got it wrong in your game. Trust me, we heard our fair share developing our game. The amount of people that were upset that we put a Zenit RK1 in transients because it's not really realistic and it's not the optimal way to shoot. They care. They're overwhelmed with passion. But the question is, are they actually showing up long term? Now, if you're fans of the channel, you probably know that I've been covering a lot less tactical FPS games in recent years because there's only so many weapon inspect animations I can get hard for. There's only so many chest rigs I can throw on a character before I go, okay, I've seen this 100 times already. There's only so many doors I can stand on the side of and breach. And all of the milsim Twitter hype does not equal a sustainable player base. And so when I look at WARDOGS, I'm not asking whether or not it looks cool. It does. It looks incredible, actually. I'm asking whether or not Bulkhead understands the graveyard that they're walking into, because I find that the genre is full of technically impressive, mechanically deep, yet financially struggling shooters. And if Bulkhead and WARDOGS want to survive, they can't just make yet another serious tactical shooter, brother. They need to decide who this is actually for. They need progression that respects players' time. They need content velocity, right? We're seeing that with Battlefield 6. They need a reason for people to come back on a Tuesday night 3 weeks after launch when the novelty wears off. And as I'm putting together this video, I'm also realizing that there is an onus on the consumer side as well. We're talking about what the devs can do. I also think the community doesn't need to build this up as the next Battlefield killer or the next AAA behemoth. They also don't need to write this off as the next World War III or the next insert tactical shooter that doesn't have a player base. I myself have invited the developers back onto the Push to Talk podcast because I want to get answers, and I also want to make sure that we set expectations for the community so everybody doesn't build this up into something that it's not either really good or really bad. Long story short, on the consumer side, I think we just need to put our expectations in check. This isn't Battlefield, this isn't DICE, this isn't EA, this isn't Activision, this is an indie team, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about the common pitfalls that indie teams make in comparison to the expectations that the player base now has in this space. So I want to talk about WARDOGS and what they need to get right, what I think they need to focus on to retain that player base long term, and what I personally want to see answered when it comes to the game's design. I've been talking a lot about it and I've been excited, but now I want to cut out all the hype. I want to cut out that excitement, and I want to get down to the nitty gritty, because I'm not about to watch another game and another studio go through the same cycle that all of these other games have gone through to watch it go to zero. And I am exhausted of watching every single one of these games go to zero. You know what's not exhausting though? GamerSups and their 20% off sale happening right now from February 20th to February 27th. Use code BigFry at checkout and get 20% off your entire order site-wide. It's a sugar-free alternative to the bullshit energy drinks that are out there right now. You can grab yourself a tub of your favorite flavors, grab yourself a shaker, and get active in 2026. All right, so one of the main things that I see from the tactical FPS space is obviously it's being built by people who are super passionate about weapons, about character customization, about ballistics, about attachments, about all of the stuff around shooting guns. But what we don't get is people who are passionate about making gameplay loops that are engaging enough for players to play long term. You can jump into Ground Branch and play Barbie with your character all day, but at the end of it all, you're just jumping into a map and shooting at basic AI. You can customize your weapons and play Ready or Not, PvE, and it's a great immersive experience, but there's not much of a gameplay loop that's holding players there long term. These games are all nice to play in small splashes. I can boot up Ready or Not, Ground Branch, Operator, Incursion Red River, all of these games, and you can play them for an afternoon or an evening with your friends, but then you're going back to playing games that actually have progression, leaderboards, rankings, and whatever else. And these tactical shooters, while they might be able to make some money, up front with initial purchases, they definitely struggle on the back end to then keep the development train rolling. And I know the examples I just used are all, PvE/co-op experiences, but even when you transport that to the PvP multiplayer space, a lot of the games end up just being session-based, and people build and form communities around them. But what you have with games like Hell Let Loose and Squad and Postscriptum and all these other ones is you jump into a game, you jump into a match, you play the objective, and then that's it. There's no persistence. There's nothing to really play for outside of the core gameplay loop itself, which, again, could be fun. But when you look at the data and you look at the actual player bases for these games, you can tell that there's not a lot of staying power outside of a few anomalies. I would call those Hell Let Loose, Squad, and Arma. And Arma has a community for an entire different reason. That's all the community-made content. The being able to build communities and have the tools to do that over in Arma is why that game is still so popular. So with WARDOGS, they have this system in the game that I'm actually really excited about, which is their money system. Basically, you go into a match with $10,000, and everything you do earns you money. So if you revive somebody, you get cash. If you maybe deliver and transport players to the point using a vehicle, you can get cash for it. Every kill you get earns cash. You can then spend that money on attachments, gear, loadouts, whatever, and you can build yourself up, and it's this continual cycle of currency spending and currency earning. And then they have an in-game shop. Don't panic. It's nothing like what we've seen in the AAA space and now kind of bleeding into the indies. But what it is it's all in-game currency. And at the end of every season, you can turn your currency into gold bars that then can be used to purchase exclusive cosmetics and whatever else. We don't really have the details on how expansive that system is, but it's all this in-game ecosystem of money. And when I hear that, it instantly excites me because there is a loop of progression, this metagame persistence, where if I do very well in my first game, I go in with $10,000, I'm killing motherfuckers, I come back out with, let's say, $15,000. Now I'm going into the next game with $15,000, and it's this persistence that I think is going to appeal to a lot of players, and it's the reason you want to keep upping your bankroll so that you can get better gear. But even so, at the end of it all, that's still a very shallow progression type experience, and I want WARDOGS and Bulkhead to consider how in-depth they could make this metagame persistence, because I think that is where a lot of these games, and even in the AAA space, that's where a lot of these games fail on the retention forefront. So I want to put an idea out there. WARDOGS is playing with two concepts. The idea of this monetization of everything that you do. You're earning in-game currency, you're earning cash, but they also have this faction system in play that we haven't seen much of yet, but it reminds me a lot of Mag. If you guys played Mag on the PlayStation 3 back in the day, there's 3 factions that you can choose from when you jump into the game for the first time, and you play for one of these factions. But I think back to the old days of choosing Horde versus Alliance in World of Warcraft, or choosing, you know, Sever or Raven during the days of Mag. And it felt like a sense of pride to choose one of the factions that you wanted to play for in WARDOGS. I don't know if there's character customization, but if there is it going to be tied to which faction that you choose? Are you going to be able to earn certain cosmetics based on said faction? Is there a metagame where some of the cash that I earn in my game can then be spent to increase a faction's standing within a global warfare metagame, to where all of these factions are vying for control of this board, and after 30 days, the faction with the most amount of money and resources put towards it might earn a custom cosmetic for every player of that faction, or something like that, to make the communities come together and actually feel pride for the choices that they make. Think of Helldivers. The reason why that game was so successful is because they were doing the community events where everybody was working towards taking out sectors of the map to control and push back the enemy forces. And that's what I think Helldivers did very, very well. And that's what I think a lot of games fail to do. There's a community aspect to these choices that I think a lot of developers don't want to go down. When we think of Gray Zone Warfare, another tactical bro FPS, it has a lot of good things going for it. And one of those things that I was really excited about was their faction system. Again, 3 different factions on the map, and everybody plays together as a faction against other player factions, and that is really cool. But it was an inch deep puddle. There was nothing there to really play for. They didn't really get into territory control. They didn't get into the rewards for actually fighting and playing for said faction. And I do think these games need to invest in that community and social aspect. There's a little bit of tribalism when you have a bunch of people joining up for a faction and actually making those choices matter. If I'm a Lone Star Ranger inside of WARDOGS and I'm playing, make it mean something. Make it to where I have to coordinate with my friends about what faction we want to join and which ones we want to play with. Add meaningful bios and backstories and lore to this to make us really interested in why we're playing and fighting for these factions in this war. And then reward us for not taking the money and spending it on our own gear, but taking the money and putting it towards this global warfare system. I really feel like there needs to be a metagame social element to this faction warfare system that you can tie together with the economy of WARDOGS. And again, I don't know if this is something they're thinking about. We still don't have a lot of details, but that is the main thing that I think a lot of people are looking for when it comes to these shooters nowadays, is a reason to keep playing past doing daily challenges to unlock an attachment, or doing this challenge to unlock a weapon skin. When it feels like you're doing stuff and working with the community or with your tribe or your faction to get stuff that nobody else can get, that is really, really cool. And I think more people nowadays are looking for the social element of it. Because realistically, if you wanted a slower paced tactical FPS that just focused on gameplay, you could play Squad. If you wanted something that might not be the slow pace of Squad, but still kind of grounded in realism, there's Hell Let Loose. There's so many shooters I could point to that does what WARDOGS is doing, maybe not the exact same way with the 3 factions and the King of the Hill style gameplay, but we also have games like Bellum coming out that are trying to do similar things with a control point that kind of shifts around the map. There's so many tactical FPSs out there that you could point to and go, this game does this like this. WARDOGS is in a very unique position to where they have that all-out warfare gameplay, a little bit slower pace. But realistically, I don't want this game to go out and just be a shooter where you go in and it feels like session-based with a little bit of persistence where you can keep cash between rounds, because I feel like that's going to be viable for a month. And then people are going to start just trickling back to their old faithfuls, especially if the content cadence isn't there post, we're going to call it early access launch, right? Early access or not, there's a lot of players that want a constant feed of content. And this is why we opted to not do multiplayer in the first place, And so for WARDOGS, they're walking into a fucking time bomb where as soon as the game comes out, players are going to absolutely devour the map. They're going to play it. And I know it's what, 256 by 250. It's 256 kilometers squared. And then the point changes to different areas around the map every game. So every game isn't exactly the same, but the biome is the same. The vibe is the same. I don't know if the game has day-night cycles or weather cycles or anything like that. But so even if you're in a different point in the next map, it still feels kind of all the same. And I would hope that these guys have a plan for that as well. What does a new season actually look like? What does your live service model look like? As much as you don't want to be a live service game, or you might not think that you're a live service game, you are. Any sort of, I mean, fuck me, any sort of development nowadays gets pitched as live service. We came out and we said Transience was going to be a single player game that you purchase. There's not going to be any DLCs, battle passes, and nothing like that. And we still get asked, like, when's the next content update coming? When, like, are you going to be dropping more DLCs in the future? Everybody expects constant content nowadays. And while I don't agree with it from the consumer side, I actually think it's a fucking plague, and you can see how brain rotted the consumer side is. The fact is we've been bred for the last decade now to expect that from every sort of developer, no matter what. And so for WARDOGS, I know they're indie. I know they're not the biggest team in the world, but you have to wonder what their plan is to keep people in the game. Because my last point was a suggestion from me. I think they need to invest in that. I don't know if they have, and if they haven't, what's their plan? Because if they're not doing microtransactions, which they've already said, respect to them, what's the plan for A, keeping people in the game with retention, and B, what's your plan for a content rollout? Are we going to see new maps in the future? It sounds like they're only working on the one right now because it's a huge fucking map, but what does that actually mean for future content? Is it new weapons? Is it new game modes? I don't think it is, because they're kind of banking on this, you know, King of the Hill style mode. So I'm a little confused on what that actual rollout is going to look like. Obviously, in early access, their focus is going to be squashing bugs, making sure the game goes to a 1.0 state, and that's where all of this stuff can come into play, and we can kind of see what that's going to look like. But I'm just curious, you know, as somebody who has a lot of, I would say, critical opinions about how the multiplayer space has transformed over the last decade or so, I hope WARDOGS can break the mold and actually bring a little bit of confidence back to the space, because I'll be honest, I don't have a lot, and it has nothing to do with them and everything to do with just where we are in the multiplayer FPS space. You know, for a game like this, you're not banking on things like leaderboards or rankings or anything like that, at least I don't think. And so there's a lot of questions that I have for the, I would say, like, the business side, but not in the sense of like, oh, I don't give a fuck about your shareholders. I want to know how the business side of development is then going to impact the future of the title from a player base and a consumer perspective. And so, yeah, there's a lot of questions. Are we going to be getting new maps? What does a season look like? You mentioned this gold bar market where at the end of a season, you can trade in your currency, switch it to gold bars, and then everybody wipes. Is that how it works as well? So your inventory is always going to be in a state of wiping, and then you can, you know, participate in this like gold bar, convert your cash, get cosmetics. Is that the case? And if we have the ability, this is my thought process, if we have the ability to have the factions, have the economy, as well as have the cosmetics, I don't think it's much of a stretch to really lean into this global warfare faction system. On top of the fact that I think people are going to be wanting to see new guns, new vehicles, new everything, right? I think you're stepping into a live service role here, and I hope you're prepared for that. And on the contrary to all this, I'm seeing in their Discord, they're talking about the potential of hosting private servers. So me as a YouTuber and for my community, I can host a private server. What does that mean for the economy? Are you going to be able to earn stuff playing on private servers? Are they going to have official server partners? So like content creators that are official so that, you know, you can't cheese the economy and just go in and like, you know, boost accounts so that they just have a bunch of money. What does the balancing look like there? There's a lot of unanswered questions. And so I've asked the developers to come back onto the podcast now that we have more of a concrete idea of what the game is. There's still so many hidden questions, and I really want to get into the nitty gritty of it. And I think, you know, before the launch, even though I'm excited for the devs, I'm excited for the game concept. It looks fun. But what I'm not excited about is watching another studio go from, hey man, we peaked at 70,000 players and now we're struggling to get 500. Because if there's no way to sustain the servers and no way to sustain the development post-launch, they have to have a banging launch. But then for the consumer side, a banging launch doesn't mean much when you buy the game and everybody's hyped, and then a month later, it's fucking dead. It might not be dead on arrival, but I mean, it's damn near there. I don't want that to happen, but in order for that not to happen, all of these other things need to line up, and it's a tough market. And so even though a lot of my ideas and concepts and discussions are for WARDOGS, I actually think a lot of developers, specifically guys like Gray Zone Warfare, can take a lot from this video. You need to lean into the social aspect of, you know, you guys want to build these communities and you want to build a loyal following. Reward the following for making choices and playing your game, and build the systems out to be able to support that. Anyways, I don't even know how long this video is. I recorded this one in chunks. I hope you guys ended up liking the video. If you did, leave a like on the video, subscribe for more FPS game dev discussion. WARDOGS has a lot of potential, but every single game in this genre has had potential in the past, and I'll be honest, like I said, outside of a couple outliers, we have seen a lot of potential just be squandered or not capitalized on in ways that just actually breaks my fucking heart. Especially when we're talking about like bankrolling these kind of projects. There's so much money involved in this that when I watch those player numbers drop and then I watch developers have to pivot and change to be able to sustain, it's like, man, I wish, like in the case of WARDOGS, I wish we could get this shit out in front so that when you launch, even though it's early access, you have the community building tools right there for you. You have that aspect that I think a lot of developers tend to ignore. And so I wanted to put my opinions out there, do a little bit of prodding to see if we can't get some of these conversations moving so we know where the developers' heads are at. As always, guys, my name is Big Fry. 20% off at gamersubs.gg if you use code BigFry up until February 27th. There's a ton of awesome flavors over there. Grab a tub, grab a shaker, use code BigFry, get a sick discount, support the channel. And if you don't want to do that, man, leave a like on the video, and I want to know your thoughts down below. If you made it to the end of the video, use the keyword bulkhead in your comments. Capitalize that shit so I can see it down below, and let me know your thoughts. What do you want to see from this game? Try not to go too fucking crazy. They are an indie studio at the end of the day, but I know they're watching these videos and gathering feedback. They have their ear to the ground with the community. WARDOGS has a lot of potential, and I don't want to see it miss its opportunity to strike. 100,000 wish lists I think they got in 3 days. 200,000 I think is the number. Like, they're growing like crazy, and I want to make sure that once people get in the fucking door, they stay there for longer than a week. All right, that's the goal here. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Big Fry, and I'll see you on the next one.